If you're like most people right now who are worried that AI is coming for your job, this video is for you. And honestly, I understand why. The headlines are everywhere and the pace of change is happening really fast. But in my company, Modern Skill, we train and upskill non-tech professionals every single week to leverage AI to become the most powerful person, not only in their team, but also in their company. And what we've seen is that the people who are thriving and becoming irreplaceable in the age of AI, there are those who built a unique set of skills that anyone can learn. And these skills made them the person everyone else turns to. So I'm going to share with you all those skills in this video. Now, here's the thing that most people get wrong when they try to learn AI. They try to learn all the tools, all the apps, and collect every single prompt from everyone online. And I get it because that's what all the content we're seeing are telling us to do. But adding more tools without the right skills underneath them is a bit like adding more instruments to a band, right? That doesn't know how to play altogether. And the band would just get busier and louder, but that music doesn't actually get better. So in a recent study by IBM, they found that 85% of CEOs now say every functional leader, not just the tech team, they need to become AI fluent in their own domain. So no job function out there can be complacent. And Accenture CEO Julie Sweet even made AI essential for any employee promotion going forward. So being a non-tech professional, if you're one like me, this is your real strategic opportunity here. The professionals who understand how to apply AI inside their actual work, they are becoming the most valuable person in every organization. So what really separates them? It's not the tools they use, it's 5 specific skills that work together and they compound over time. And to make it easier to remember for you, I put it inside my THINK framework, THINK, which I'll share with you throughout this video. Now, working through all 5 of these, and you will stop being someone who just uses AI, and you become someone who is almost like an AI multiplier. I like to call this someone who takes everything they already built, their experience, their judgment, their relationships, and uses AI to become more influential, get promoted faster, and make more money. So let's get started with the first one. By the way, I put together a free AI playbook that walks you through practical ways to apply all 5 of these skills in your work. And you can grab your copy below or go to modernskill.ai/playbook and find the link in the description below. So the first skill is about how you think, not just how fast you produce the work. And that is T, standing for thinking sharper. Now, most people use AI to get answers faster, like a search engine. They would type a question, they get a response, and then they move on. And that works fine for most simple tasks. But the professionals that I work with who are really pulling ahead, there are those who are using AI differently. They're using it to stress test their thinking before they even act on it. And I really think that there's a difference between getting an answer from AI and actually thinking better because of AI. And here's why this matters more than most people realize. So in MIT Media Lab study in 2025, they found that heavy AI usage can actually reduce brain engagement and memory during writing tasks. And the reason this happens is in how most people use AI. They ask it for answers. And then the brain gets comfortable. They go along with what it says because it sounds knowledgeable, copy paste. And then every time they do that, they're outsourcing a very small piece of their own judgment and their own critical thinking. And then not surprisingly, over time, that just compounds. But the researchers also realized something really important here is that the way that you use AI, it makes such a difference. And AI that tells you what to do encourages you to be dependent on it. But AI that asks you really probing questions and challenges your thinking is actually more likely to preserve your judgment over time. And the tool is the same here, but how you approach it and how you use it is really everything. I want to share something really personal here because I think this example really illustrates this even better with something that happened to me personally. So a few months ago, I had a company reach out. It was for a speaking partnership that could also lead to a training contract for my business, which honestly, it made it really financially significant for myself and my business. And on paper, it looked really good, but something didn't really sit right with me. And I couldn't quite describe what it was. So I pretty much sat on it for a few days. I went back and forth in my mind, telling myself I was just being too cautious. But what I actually needed was a difficult conversation. And I was too uncomfortable to have it with myself. So I opened up Claude and I used it as a sparring partner. I didn't want to get a recommendation, not to have it make a decision for me, but I wanted to push back on my thinking. and really draw out what I really knew, but I haven't really said it myself clearly enough. I gave it all the context, the details of the partnership, what it was asking of me. And then I said, well, challenge my reasoning on this. What are the strongest argument against it? And what am I not seeing here? And what came back was exactly the kind of conversation that I've been avoiding with myself. It told me the specific value conflicts. It asked me questions that I was too uncomfortable to ask myself. And within that conversation I had with Claude back and forth, I got a lot of clarity. And there was a misalignment between what this company stood for and what I stand for. So I declined the offer the next day. And funny enough, this is how life really works, right? A larger and more aligned client reached out shortly after that because I created this space for myself by saying no and saying no to something that wasn't right for me. I could say yes to something that actually fit. And that contract was actually much more longer term and far more aligned to where I'm taking my work. So you see how here the AI didn't make that decision. It created the condition for me to make it clearly in my own critical thinking as a sparring partner. And in my own life as a solo founder, I don't always have co-founders or experienced advisors I can call on all the time. But what I can have now is this thinking partner that's always available, and there's not really an agenda. And the skill is more than just learning how to prompt here, is that really the skill is knowing how to use AI as a tool to really draw out the best thinking you already have. So here's the exact prompt structure that I use. Act as my strategic thinking partner. And here's my thinking on whatever the situation is. Describe it in really clear context for your AI tool. And before answering, ask up to 3 clarifying questions. If anything is unclear, challenge my assumptions and surface blind spots, and only then help me make the best decision. Now, the second skill is the one that I think about the most, and it's H, that is harnessing your taste. And really it's about training your unique taste. It's not just me, but other people like Christo, who I really love and follow. He said this time and time again, is that as AI gets better, it gets easier and easier to trust the first thing that it gives you. The output, they're getting cleaner, they're getting more polished, more strategically sounding, but that's actually where the trap is, because when everyone has access to the same models and everyone is trusting that first output from AI, everyone's work starts to look exactly the same. We're drowning in more AI slop than ever before, everywhere online. And you've seen this, right? And the risk is that you become blended into a sea of average. So the skill that separates people at this point, really that's taste. Knowing what good looks like, knowing what sounds like you, knowing what's almost right, but not quite, and being able to close that gap to make it, to go from average to something that's really uniquely yours. And here's what I want you to hear me out on this, is that I think it matters especially for those of you who have years experience in your field and industry. So instead of feeling like you're behind this age of AI and technology, you actually got the most unfair advantage right now. Because I believe that the experience is not made obsolete by AI. You're now more powerful by having it. So you're probably thinking why that is. And that is the ability to look at what AI gives you and know immediately that something is off. To read a paragraph, maybe that sounds grammatically correct, but somehow it doesn't really land. Or when you look at something, to recognize a strategic report that sounds reasonable, but missing the real insight there. And that capacity comes from years of doing the work. When you care about quality, you care about your industry domain knowledge, and you're learning from what failed before in your own experience. So all of that is yours, and nobody can generate it for you because that's your ultimate moat. And that really is the point, is that taste is the one thing that AI can't replicate, because taste is lived. It's accumulated over your whole lifetime. It's a sum of every piece of work you ever reviewed, every client you talked to, every time you sat down with something that wasn't quite right and you fixed it until it was getting better. So how do you actively build and use it? And for me, I think looking back at my own career, there are 3 things. So first is that you want to study the best work in your field and really understand why it works and what's amazing about it. So what makes that proposal so compelling that it made the client say yes? And what made the sales email actually get a response? So what makes that presentation that makes people lean forward and want to hear every word? And all of my own experience having gone through this, I learned from that over time. And then secondly is to build a personal library of all these examples. Especially now in the age of AI, this is so important. Save examples of outputs, yours and others, that you think are absolutely exceptional. And when something's good, instead of just moving on, ask yourself and ask your AI, what specifically makes this work? What will make it even better going forward? And then when you feed that reasoning, the iterations back and forth into your instructions, so the next output starts to get closer to where you really want it to be. And then the last one is that every time you want to correct an AI output, turn that feedback that you have corrected into an updated skill and guidance for your AI. If you change 5 things before you send something, tell the AI what you changed and why. Show and prove your tool and their output, and that becomes your taste. Eventually translate into a language that AI can actually use and understand without you having to do it over again. So here's the standard that I hold every time before it goes out with my name on it, because that's important to me. Does this sound like me? Will I be proud to have created this? And is there something here that only I would say that I could add? If the answer to any of these is no, for me, then that piece of work is not done just yet. Now, before we get into the next skill, I want to tell you about something that's made a real difference in how I actually present my thinking and my ideas. Now, most people, they can think of good ideas, but very few can present them in a way that makes people say yes. That is to say yes to the job, the client, or maybe pitch anything really that we're trying to convince people to do with our idea. So I want to tell you about Gamma because this tool has saved me hours from trying to make a deck look beautiful or presenting my ideas in the best way. Gamma is an AI presentation tool that takes your content and turns it into a beautiful professional deck in minutes. I usually give it a prompt and then a description of my ideas and business, and then creates a custom template based on my brand layout and the look and feel. And what comes out looks polished and designed. I use it for client proposals, YouTube strategy docs, even internal planning for myself. And it saves me hours, and honestly, it makes my work look so much better. So try it for yourself, and the link is in the description below. And thanks to Gamma for sponsoring this video. And here's the third skill that we need to talk about, because in a world where everyone has access to the same AI tools, how you communicate your thinking is just as important as thinking itself. Which really brings us to I, and that is influence through communication. And for me, my own career, what I learned is that influence has always come down to one thing, and that is making the right people understand your ideas clearly enough to act on them. And AI has made this both easier and harder at the same time. So easier because you can actually now produce polished, structured communication much faster than before, right? Like an email can be written in seconds. And things like the one that I showed you earlier with tools like Gamma to produce your presentations. But harder because so can everyone else. So that bar has really moved up. And the skill here isn't just using AI to produce all the work for you. I really think the skill here is using AI to help you communicate clearly with more impact than you could do on your own. So here's a framework that I used, and is one that you can really apply to any task that needs to be clearly communicated. And I think of it in 3 parts. So actor, input, and mission. Now, actor means telling the AI who is writing for you and who is it writing as. So not just write me an email, but you want to tell it the role is taking the voice in the relationship. Let's say you're drafting an email to your CEO who's super busy and have a very specific personality. Make sure to include those, right? So you are writing as a senior strategist to a CEO who values directness and has very limited time. And input means giving it real context, not just like a vague brief. The background on the situation, any previous emails, call transcripts, what's worked before and what hasn't. And the more specific and real the input that you can give, the more specific and distinctive and really useful the result can be. A mission means being precise about the outcome you want. So, for example, you could say, I want the person to feel confident in approving this by the end of the email. That's a mission. Write me an email about the proposal is not going to give you the best result. Let's say you have a stakeholder meeting coming up. You know what you want to present, but you also know that the room isn't going to be unanimous. There are people in the meeting who have different priorities, different concerns. They might even have a reason to push back on what you're proposing. And most people, they walk into that room hoping for the best. Whereas you, in this case, as the AI multiplier, which could be you, walking in having already had that difficult conversation before the meeting even starts. And how do you do that? So before you even build your presentation or your proposal, you give your AI tool the full context of the situation. So the background, the people in the room, their roles, what each of them cares about, and any history that's relevant. When you have done all of that, then you ask it, given what you know about these stakeholders, what are the 3 most likely objections to this proposal? And then for each one, what is the most credible way to address it? So now by giving all this upfront context, what comes back isn't just a generic list of objections that anyone can write up, but because you've given it all this information, it will tell you the specific friction points that are likely to come up in that specific room. And you can build those responses directly into how you will structure and present your own thinking. And when those objections, they come up, which they definitely will, you're not caught off guard, right? Because you already thought about it through with using all these scenarios beforehand. You have responded clearly and calmly in that case. And really that's what influence looks like in a professional setting. And you're now much more prepared. The next skill is to navigate and learn new skills faster. Now, at some point, every professional career, you get handed an opportunity that's really slightly ahead of where you're currently at. And this happened to all of us, right? So let's say you've been asked to lead on something that's outside your current expertise. And you have two choices. You say you're not ready, or you find a way to get ready faster through using AI. And the skill to learn how to learn with AI faster is really the best option here. And I know this feeling firsthand because when I first made the shift from digital marketing to AI strategy, I wasn't starting from zero technically, but I wasn't also starting from expertise. The field was moving really fast and I need to get up to speed fast. But what I found was that AI helped me to compress the learning curve so much faster and not in the way that most people expect. So the method I used whenever I'm stepping into something new, now that I have AI at my disposal, isn't about getting answers faster. It's actually a 5-prompt sequence that I run in order every single time, and each one does a specific job. So let me show you what those are. And the first one is a 30-day learning plan prompt. So before I read a single article or watch a single video or course, I ask AI to give me a structured session-by-session plan for the topic, what to study, in what order, and why. And this means I'm not starting from scratch every single time or getting lost in the sea of content and just give up. And I actually have a map before I start walking and get into the space. The second one is a knowledge gap prompt. So once I cover the basics and learn the basic courses, I ask AI to quiz me on what I think I know. And this is where it gets really uncomfortable in the best way because it really shows me exactly where my understanding breaks down. And that way I really understand where to then tackle next to fill in those gaps. The third is the mental model prompt. So I like to ask AI for the 3 most useful thinking shortcuts for this topic, explained in plain English for me. And these are practical frameworks that really help me to see new information a lot more clearly. And the fourth one here is the teacher back prompt. So I find that really you learn the best when you try to teach it to someone else. And I explain the topic back to the AI tool in my own words and ask it to correct me. And more importantly, to ask me why I got something wrong when I do. Because I really feel that when you're teaching something back, even to an AI, it forces you to fill in the gaps in your own understanding as well. And the fifth one is the next step prompt. So once I feel really solid on my foundations, I ask AI what I should learn next and in what order. And really that builds this logically for me based on what I already know. And this keeps the learning compounding rather than just piling on more information and feeling like there's no structure underneath it. So I really believe that running this whole learning sequence on any new topic, and you will cover so much more in terms of knowledge in 30 days than most people cover in 6 months of just passive reading. The last skill K here is to keep it running using a system. And the fifth skill is where everything we talk about, it all starts to compound together. So individual skills, they make you better. And systems, they make you consistent. And consistency at a higher level is really what scales income and influence over time for your own career and your own life. Here's the way to think about this, is that there are 2 types of work in your week. The first type has a ceiling on what you can do with it. More effort doesn't produce significantly more better results after a certain point. So formatting a document, drafting a very simple email, preparing a very standard report. Now these tasks, they matter, but they don't compound. But the second type really has unlimited potential. A better client proposal makes them say yes. A much more sharper strategic recommendation. A more compelling piece of content for your personal brand. And the goal of your AI system is to take from you the first type of work that really is very standardized, very repetitive to AI, so you can pour yourself into the second type of work that's more strategic and higher thinking. Basically, all your routine busy work that you can take off your desk. And a very useful way to decide which category any tasks fall into is to ask these 2 questions. So one is, do I actually need to be the one doing this, or can the system handle it themselves? And does this step actually need AI reasoning, or would a much more simple automated workflow do it faster and more reliably? And I want to address something here is that you don't want to become the person who just uses AI for AI's sake. And we've all seen the cautionary tale of companies like Uber, for example, recently, who basically blew their yearly AI budget in 4 months. And I think it's about realistically thinking through your current daily work and figuring out where AI can actually help you take that off your plate. Because the most effective systems, to be honest, they aren't always the most sophisticated ones. And sometimes the right answer is a very simple process that runs in the background rather than creating 20 autonomous AI agents that may just go off the rails. And I really think choosing simplicity in the right system that gets the job done is in itself a skill. So here's a 3-layer system that I use to build a system around everything I do. And the first one is the capture layer. That is how you store your thinking, your best prompts, your tested instructions that's worked really well for you, examples of outputs that you're proud of, that you loved, and any corrections and feedback you made, what you don't want to sound like. So also your anti-AI filter, and save all of these as files that you can use. And then you can carry this to any language model rather than being just locked into one. Let's say you want to move from ChatGPT to Gemini and eventually to Claude or any of the future better ones that gets launched. This is your working memory for your AI tools. And without it, you have to start from scratch every single time, which is not worth your time. And the next layer is the process layer. That is your repeatable workflows. And these are things that you do every single week. So it could be your content processes, your regular communications that you send out, like newsletters, your research approach, whatever that may be. When these are documented and systemized, the quality of your output, it gets so much more consistent every single time, especially when you have team members taking over as well. And then lastly is the output layer. This is your standards and your templates. What does a great proposal look like for you? What does a very strong client update sounds like? And what is a well-written company newsletter, right? When these are all defined, AI can then hit your standards consistently rather than guessing what good looks like every single time. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this is the goal here is to become an AI multiplier, whether that's in your current job, your team, or maybe your own business, right? Someone who takes everything that they built over their career and their knowledge, their judgment, their standards, their relationships, and then uses AI to make it go further and faster than they could ever do alone. And really that's a long-term career skill that's going to last you through whatever challenge that might come next, and is one of the most valuable things that you can build right now. I'm Laurie. Thank you so much for being here and learning with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.